Hey guys, welcome back to more HOA stories. In this video, a homeowner association Karen called the police on me because I used my jacuzzi as a disabled veteran, and she claimed that disabled people should not show themselves in public. Let's dive right into the video. The first one is titled, "Am I the a-hole for organizing a migrating flamingo protest against our HOA?" I, 45 male, never thought I would be posting here, but recent events have me questioning if I took things too far. So this is a bit of a long story, but I need some outside perspective. My wife and I live in a fairly upscale neighborhood with one of those stereotypically strict HOAs. We lived here for about 15 years, and while the rules have always been annoying, we generally try to follow them to avoid drama. That all changed last Christmas when my wife had an accident. So for context, my wife loves decorating for the holidays. She goes all out, lights, wreath, the whole 9 yards. Think Clark Griswold from Christmas Vacation, but with better taste. Our HOA has a rule that all holiday decorations must be taken down within the first week of January, which we've always managed to do in the past. This past Christmas, my wife was up on a ladder putting up lights when she lost her balance. I was at work when it happened, but our neighbor called me in a panic. By the time I got to the hospital, they had already confirmed that she had a broken ankle and would need surgery. The doctor said that she would be off her feet for at least 6 to 8 weeks. Obviously, taking down Christmas decorations became the least of our worries. I managed to get most of them down myself, but there was this one wreath on our second-story front door that I just couldn't reach safely without a taller ladder, which I didn't have. I figured I would borrow one from a neighbor once things settled down. Well, exactly 1 week after New Year's, we got our first notice from the HOA. It was a printed letter with a high-resolution photo of our front door and the wreath, citing violation of Section 732 of the HOA guidelines regarding so-called seasonal decorations. The tone was incredibly condescending, threatening a $150 fine if the wreath was not removed within 48 hours. I immediately called the HOA office and explained the situation with my wife's accident. The response I got from the HOA manager, let's call her Karen because of course that's her name, was absolutely shocking. "I understand your situation," she said in that fake sympathetic voice, "but rules are rules. We cannot make exceptions or everyone will want one. You should have planned better." I was furious. Planned better? For my wife falling off a ladder and breaking her ankle? Well, maybe she shouldn't have been up there in the first place. We recommend hiring professional holiday decoration services approved by the HOA. That's when I lost it. Are you seriously suggesting this is somehow our fault? My wife is having surgery tomorrow. Sir, I understand you're upset, but the fine will be assessed if the wreath is not removed within the specified time frame. Have a nice day. I ended up having to pay a handyman $75 just to remove one wreath because I was too busy taking care of my wife to deal with it. The whole thing left a really bad taste in my mouth, but I was too focused on helping my wife recover to do anything about it at the time. Fast forward to this summer, my wife had fully recovered and we were having a neighborhood barbecue with some of our closest neighbors. After a few beers, we started sharing HOA horror stories. It turns out we were not the only ones who had run-ins with Karen and her power trips. Our neighbor Tom had been fined for having his trash cans visible from the street for an extra day while he was attending his mom's funeral. Sarah across the street got a violation notice because her roses wear a so-called unapproved shade of red. And don't even get me started on what happened to the elderly couple down the block when their grandson painted their mailbox the wrong shade of beige. That is when my wife had this brilliant idea. She had been reading about peaceful protests and malicious compliance, and she came up with what she called Operation Migrating Flamingo. The plan was simple but brilliant. We would buy a flock of those pink plastic lawn flamingos, you know, the kind that scream tacky in the most delightful way possible. The HOA guidelines had specific rules about holiday decorations, unapproved lawn ornaments and permanent landscaping features, but nothing specifically about flamingos. More importantly, nothing about temporary lawn ornaments that might happen to move from yard to yard. We ordered 50 flamingos online and got 8 other families to join our little rebellion. The rules of engagement were simple. Number 1, the flamingos would appear in one yard overnight. When the HOA inevitably sent a violation notice, the flamingos would mysteriously disappear. Then the next night they would reappear in a different yard. Rinse and repeat. We kicked it off on a Monday night, planting all 50 flamingos in our front yard in perfect military formation, like a pink plastic army ready for battle. The reactions the next morning were priceless. People were stopping their cars to take pictures, kids were counting the flamingos on their way to school, even the mail carrier could not help but laugh. The violation notice arrived within 24 hours, complete with multiple photos and highlighted copies of various HOA guidelines about lawn aesthetics and community standards. That night, the flamingos vanished from our yard. The next morning, they appeared in Tom's yard, arranged in a perfect heart shape. His violation notice arrived that afternoon. The following day, the flamingos showed up in Sarah's yard, forming a peace symbol. Then they appeared in the Johnson's yard, spelling out HOA with a question mark. Each time a violation notice arrived, the flamingos would disappear, only to reappear in a new formation in another yard. We kept this up for 6 weeks straight. The formations got more creative each time. Circles, squares, arrows, even a flamingo flash mob that spelled out SMILE across 3 connected yards. Karen was losing her mind. She couldn't prove who was moving the flamingos, and technically, since they never stayed in one place for more than 24 hours, they couldn't be considered permanent lawn ornaments. She started driving through the neighborhood at odd hours, trying to catch the flamingo migration in action. She hired a security service to do extra patrols, which only added to the HOA expenses. The whole thing became a neighborhood sensation. People from other streets would walk through our neighborhood just to see where the flamingos would show up. Kids started a betting pool on which yard would be next. Someone even created a Facebook page called Flamingo Watch that got followed by half the town. The breaking point came when Karen tried to call an emergency HOA board meeting to pass new regulations, specifically about migratory lawn ornaments. Yes, that's actually what they called it. That is when several longtime board members finally spoke up. It turned out that Karen had been going rogue with many of her enforcement actions, often acting without board approval and being much stricter than the guidelines actually required. The board had been getting complaints for months, but it was our flamingo protest that finally forced them to address the issue. In a deliciously satisfying twist, Karen was asked to resign from her position. The board issued a formal apology to the community and promised to review and revise the guidelines to be more reasonable and compassionate. They even admitted that the whole flamingo saga had actually brought their neighborhood closer together. But here's why I am posting. While most of our neighbors thought the flamingo protest was hilarious and effective, we have gotten some unexpected backlash. Karen's daughter, who lives 3 houses down, has been going door to door telling people that her mom had to start therapy because of the harassment she experienced. She's demanding that we pay for the therapy sessions and claims that her mom lost career opportunities because of our so-called targeted bullying campaign. A few other neighbors, mainly Karen's close friends, have started a petition to ban our upcoming Flamingo Festival, saying it mocks mental health struggles and promotes mob mentality. They've even started leaving printouts of articles about workplace bullying in our mailbox. My wife thinks they're just trying to guilt trip us because their friend lost her job, but I'm starting to wonder if we went too far with the whole thing. Sure, Karen was unreasonable about the wreath, but did we really need to keep the flamingo thing going for 6 whole weeks? So Reddit, am I the a-hole for organizing this flamingo-based rebellion that ultimately cost someone their job and apparently their mental well-being? And yeah guys, let me know in the comments what you think about this story. Do you think OP was the a-hole here, or was OP in the right? Let me know in the comments. A user on Reddit said, not the a-hole, neighbors complaining about looking silly are missing the point entirely. Sometimes looking a little silly is exactly what's needed to fight ridiculous rules. In my opinion, you created positive change and brought your community together. That's a win-win. Comment number 2, you are the a-hole. I manage HR disputes for a living, and what you did was literally a textbook example of workplace harassment. You organized a targeted campaign that made someone's job impossible to do, humiliated them publicly, and ultimately got them fired. The fact that you did it in a cute way with flamingos does not make it any less hostile. Comment number 3, everyone sucks here, but you are definitely the bigger a-hole. Karen's enforcement was over the top, but you basically orchestrated a targeted harassment campaign and then tried to pass it off as just a prank. Anyone who's ever dealt with anxiety or mental health issues can tell you how devastating it is to feel like your whole community is mocking you. Yeah, she was bad at her job, but she didn't deserve this level of public humiliation. And yeah guys, I gotta say, I absolutely disagree with this comment. The last 2 comments were pretty much making OP out to be the bully, but the actual bully in the story, at least from what I could tell, was Karen. This is definitely some top tier guilt tripping on the part of these comments. Comment number 4, absolutely NTA, this is the most beautiful, peaceful and hilarious form of protest I've ever heard of. You did not damage anything, break any actual laws or hurt anyone, you just exposed an unreasonable person using creativity and community solidarity. And yeah guys, before we move over to the title story, I would very much appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to not miss any of my daily uploads. The title story is titled HOA Karen Calls 911 when I use my jacuzzi because I am a disabled veteran with a prosthetic arm. I'm sure you can all understand the pure relaxation that comes with spending time in a jacuzzi. I mean, the sheer fact that people choose to relax in hot tubs in public just shows how calming it can be to rest in a private jacuzzi. Easing yourself into the warmth that brightens up your body, the jets cause the water to bubble with its artificial current, leaning your head back and taking a nap so you can wake up with wrinkly fingers. The heat of the jacuzzi loosening up your tight ankles and joints, it even eases the end of your stump and helps my phantom itches. Okay, so that last point might not be the most relatable. I hope that not too many of you are disabled. For the sake of those that are, I hope that there aren't many Karens in your life. The events of this story were set in motion when I decided it was finally time for me to settle down in an actual house. I researched well, but didn't worry too much about the breadth of my research when I heard that an old Navy buddy of mine was going to be off to a retirement home. He offered to sell me the house for a good price. I had planned to hear him out without many expectations at first, but his hard-headed nature helped me out with one thing from the start. No HOA. Not that the house was unkempt, the man was obsessive about keeping his yard neat and his house and fences clean and well maintained. He just turned down the HOA every time they came to his doorstep. It felt like more than half of the houses that would have been perfect were in neighborhoods with strict HOAs, so I buy the house from the guy and wave him away. If I had known how much the jacuzzi would help me, then I probably would have had to walk him to his car and give him a goodbye kiss, but I didn't end up having to subject my wife to that, thankfully. Now, the fact that I'm outside of the HOA's jurisdiction is enough for all the sane individuals to actually respect my privacy after I turned down their initial offers. The HOA is a breeding ground for lunatic losers, though. And they all should just be named Karen so we can be warned. The fateful day comes and I'm relaxing in my jacuzzi, my prosthetic arm is next to the tub and I'm just awake enough to argue that I was not asleep if my wife were to accuse me of taking a nap. A woman's voice says, "What are you doing out here?" I'm about to say my rehearsed response to however my wife greeted me when it made it through my half-asleep brain that the voice was nothing like my wife's and it was genuinely angry, not at all playful inquiry that I was expecting from my wife. I opened my eyes to find this story's Karen glaring down at me with her sneer that could curdle milk. Actually, it was probably just her face in general that could do that. I had had the bad fortune to meet Karen a couple times before this. She was not one of the people who originally invited me to the HOA, but she had been badgering me about it anytime she got the chance. When I mowed the lawn, when I sat on my porch with a beer, and even when I was walking from the front door to my car and did not move fast enough to avoid her. I figured if I ignored it long enough then it would be harmless and she would give up any pretense of caring about me. I met a couple of my neighbors, because some people don't need an HOA to learn how to socialize, and I'd heard that joining the HOA would be the last thing you wanted to do to get Karen to stop bugging me. Apparently, she tried to override every decision in every meeting in some strange ploy for influence in the group. And when there weren't meetings to distract her, she was nitpicking every single visible feature of every single house in the HOA's jurisdiction and recording every perceived fault. She warned people, brought up the infractions in meetings, and took it forward into force and fines anytime the HOA got tired of refusing her fun. So anyway, her monster face stares down at me from above, and the shock wakes me up quickly. "Karen, what are you doing in my backyard?" To respond, she looked down at my prosthetic arm on the side of the jacuzzi and raised a lip in disgust. "You're currently in violation of the HOA bylaws, and I'm going to have to ask you that you remove yourself from the jacuzzi." I put my one arm behind my head and settled in. Well, seeing as I'm not in the HOA, I definitely don't have to listen to you. But I'm curious and want to humor you a bit. If you can give me a reason why I cannot soak in my jacuzzi that is not bad crap crazy, then I will go in for the day. She sputtered for a few seconds before finally replying, "Well, you may not be part of the HOA, but your neighbors are, and you should be careful about upsetting them." Did someone complain that I was soaking here? Karen said, "Look, you seem to think the issue is that you're in your jacuzzi." I replied, If it's not that, then what is actually... I thought about her disgusted glare at the prosthetic, but she spoke first. I think it's awfully inappropriate to flaunt your disability like that. Children could have nightmares from something so vulgar. That had me standing to loom my extra foot of height over her. What did you call my disability? Vulgar? Are you gonna comply or will I need to escalate the situation? I explained again that I was not a part of the HOA, but she couldn't seem to take her eyes off my stump for long enough to hear two words strung together. I asked her to wait and went back inside, retrieved the documentation to prove that I was not a part of the HOA, and brought outside a copy to push into her hands. There, is that good enough? You have no authority to say these things to me, and even if you did, you have crossed a line here. The moment I touched her, she seemed to have thought her own limbs were about to rot away. I'm fairly certain I saw her restrain a gag. She once again asked if she would need to escalate the situation, but I realized that she had to be bluffing because anyone would side with me in this situation. So I asked her to escalate it. She crumpled up the copy of my documentation and tossed it into the jacuzzi. Then she proceeded to rant at me, punctuating herself with asking if she would need to escalate the situation, to which I continued to calmly reply, "Please do." She insulted me, called me not whole, and a CRIPPLE, aka a slur for disabled people. She compared me to lepers in the Bible, and finally she actually called 911, sounding frantic as she claimed that I had assaulted her and made it clear that I was a danger to the community. I suggested we go to the front yard to wait for them, and I hope I don't need to say it, but I left my prosthetic arm where it was, sitting next to the jacuzzi, to walk to my front yard. Karen did not want to follow at first, but she ended up following me soon enough. A few people waved and said hi, and I responded while Karen steadily grew more and more quiet next to me. The cops arrived, and while they took Karen's statement, I asked if I could go inside and grab the documentation that proves that I'm not under the HOA's authority. They had an officer follow me, and we hit it off since we were both vets. So we came back outside to find that I had rapport built up, and Karen was losing it by the second as she clarified how I assaulted her. When I mentioned that they could review my camera footage for the backyard, her story completely collapsed. So it was not too much longer before they were warning Karen that too many false emergency calls could constitute a charge herself. She backed away with her tail between her legs, and I almost let it end there. If she had just been trying to imply that I wasn't wearing enough clothes, or if I was playing music or a movie or something loud to actually disturb neighbors, then I would have. But she was implying that I just simply didn't have enough limbs and I lost my arm fighting, so she could have her fun with her pointless HOA politics without worrying about her freedoms. So I contacted a few people and was led to a lawyer who specializes in discrimination cases and had a convenient surplus of experience in HOA disputes as well. Finally, I filed a lawsuit against Karen for harassment, discrimination, and defamation. My jaw dropped when I saw the number that the lawyer suspected we could get out of the lawsuit, with the fact that I had camera footage and a police report backing me up. Karen, stubborn as she was, refused to settle. The case going to civil court managed to make it to local news, another brilliant move by my lawyer, and everyone was on my side from minute one. It helped to have interviews show up on the local news where people from my neighborhood made it clear that this was not a single instance, but just one moment in a larger pattern of horrifically inappropriate behavior from Karen. The lawsuit was easy enough to win, and the lump sum she now had to pay me, or at least her wealthy husband had to, was just one piece of her punishment. The HOA expelled her from the board, and her pastime while her husband worked was now in the bin. Meanwhile, her husband's money upgraded my jacuzzi, installed privacy screens, and left me enough extra to plan a trip for my wife and daughter. Overall, well worth one bad confrontation. And yeah guys, as we always know, never mess with a veteran. This Karen learned the hard way. The next one is titled Malicious Story. So this happened a while ago. I had to deliver some of our company's products from one worksite to another multiple times. I usually arrived before the other employees started their work, so I figured I could unload my car already in order to save my coworkers time and for me to not be interrupted during my work later during the day. Plus, I was the one who knew which products were ordered by which customer, so I didn't have to spend time on figuring out which belongs to which customer, since I was the one who loaded everything into the car. So I put all the loose products for each customer from the trunk on a separate Euro pallet, pushed it into our workshop with a pallet truck, put the delivery notices in each of them, and left them in a visible place for my coworker to move them wherever he wanted, whenever he wanted, without much hassle or manpower needed. When he arrived and started working, I went up to him and told him what products arrived and for which customer these were, in order to make sure he knows about the orders as well. Since I didn't know where to put the pallets, I placed them into the workshop via the pallet truck because I didn't want these products to stay outside and opening up an opportunity for passerbys to steal the company products. After I did this same procedure twice, he came up to me and gave me a 10-minute lecture about how it could possibly come to my mind to make such a huge mess in the workshop. He criticized that I put the products in the wrong place, messing up his storage system, and that the products fell off the Euro pallets all the time, which is funny because it didn't happen when I used the pallet truck to bring them into the workshop. As such, he declared that I'm not allowed to unload the car again. A week later we received a huge order with over 2 tons worth of products. I had 560 kg of different products customized but not packaged in my truck. As per his request, I did not unload the car. At some point he came up to me and asked me to unload the car. My response: no, I will just make a huge mess in the workshop. And we don't want the products to fall off from the pallets. You should just do it by yourself. His face when he realized he had to sort it all out himself and manually unload, it was quite funny. It was even better when he noticed that I could not bring a delivery notice because the order was not complete yet. And thus he had to check every single product and write down what products arrived in which quantity already, all by himself. Of course I knew the quantities, but he didn't ask me. So that 5-minute task easily took him half an hour to do. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I'm curious, if you ever got malicious compliance at your workplace, please let us know in the comments about it. I would love to hear. The next one is a revenge story. It starts like this. Something like 25 years ago, I had a landline in my bedroom. About 3 months after I got it, I started getting calls every day for the local golf course. I told them they had the wrong number and hung up. Some people would call back over and over, insisting that they were calling the number on the card. So I hopped on my bike and headed to the golf course, took on one of their cards and discovered that they were indeed showing my number. I talked to the manager who insisted it was their number. I asked him to call it, but he refused, probably because he knew he would end up talking to my parents, so no resolution. So then I went home and for the couple years I accepted every single reservation that called me no matter what time they wanted. Their reviews were not great and most were complaints about the reservation process. And the next one is a revenge story again. So a few months ago I volunteered to plan my mother-in-law's 60th birthday and my father-in-law's 64th birthday, which was a weekend in wine country. I made a reservation for a group of 10 at a new upscale restaurant months beforehand. Because it was also a winery, we arrived 2 hours early and checked in with the restaurant to see if they could seat us earlier. Despite an empty restaurant, they said they couldn't, and that was no big deal. We understood that they could be low-staffed, so we went and got some wine and hung out and listened to live music. Close to our reservation time, I got a text from the restaurant to be seated. It was beginning to rain. We walked over to the hostess and she informed us that because it was raining and because our table was outdoors, that they would not be able to seat us tonight. As calmly as I could, I explained to them that I've had a reservation for months. I've been here for 2 hours and I was not told that my reservation was for an outdoor table or subject to rain. There was no indoor and outdoor option. I explained to them that it was for a 60th and 64th birthday party. I asked if they could split us up between tables and they just kept saying that there was nothing they could do and that it wasn't their fault. Supposedly because we cannot control the weather. I snapped a little and said sharply, well, what you could have done was not reserve out a table to a large party that you could not guarantee. The manager just shrugged. We left and because it was a Saturday at 6 p.m. there was no way we were getting a seat at another restaurant. I had to go to the grocery store and cook a full meal for 10 people. I emailed the manager to ask them if there was anything they could comp because our experience was so terrible. I got no response after a week, so I made multiple Gmail accounts and left what was a fairly new restaurant 10 different 1-star reviews. In the reviews I said that you should never book this restaurant if you have a large party, how they didn't try to find us a table at another restaurant and how they had 2 hours to fix their error. As well as that they booked out a table they couldn't guarantee and that they didn't move a table undercover, which there was plenty. Also, that they didn't provide any comps or otherwise make any attempt to fix their error. They ended up with a 2-star drop in their Google rating because of my reviews. I left one review for every person that didn't get a seat. Several days after I had posted, they reached out offering to comp a meal for my in-laws if our group took the reviews down, which I refused. Before we end the video, we will read a funny story from r/malicious compliance. It is titled, "Boss did not want to pay my colleague for a management role, so he took half the team with him." So basically, a colleague of mine was offered a management role, basically told to take on extra responsibilities for 20 people, but with no extra pay. The boss gave him the usual speech about how it was a great opportunity and would open doors for him. He took the role anyway, built strong relationships with his team, and after 8 months another company offered him the same management role with actual compensation. He accepted the offer and in the process took about 10 people of the team he was managing with him. These were just people who trusted him enough to follow him to a better workplace. The ex-boss was shocked and majorly understaffed at that. By the way, to clarify some things, no, I'm not on the team, we are colleagues in something else. Number 2, I'm not aware about the details of his contract. Also, some people made assumptions that this would be illegal, but there are many countries worldwide and legislation varies depending on where you live. Please keep that in mind. And yeah guys, thank you for watching, please check out my endless playlist on the left and I will see you again tomorrow.